Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits, Namandaps, Namandaps, Namandaps. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. I'd actually like to begin today with a few jokes because, every good speaker is always supposed to, lighten the mood a little bit with a few good jokes to begin. So, we're going to give it a try. All right, first joke, ready. A neutron walks into a bar and orders a drink. Now, when the neutron gets his drink, he looks at the bartender and he says, "How much do I owe you?" The bartender looks back at the neutron and he says, "For you, neutron, no charge." Next one. E flat walks into a bar. Bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve minors." Last one, I promise it'll end soon. The past, the present, and the future walk into a bar, and it was tense. I'm sorry, I really do apologize, but I brought it up for a reason, right? Because recently, if you've been on social media, Twitter was recently abuzz with this thing called the Sumerian dog joke. The Sumerian dog joke. And what the Sumerian dog joke is exactly what it sounds like. It is a Sumerian joke about a dog. The joke is ancient, and by ancient I mean that it's somewhere between 4,500 to 1900 BC. That is correct. Very, very old. It is one of the first bar jokes in recorded history, and one of the oldest jokes in recorded history. And what's weird about it is that it's literally about a dog walking into a bar, as far as we can tell. And it was taken from the historical records of Oxford, and then it was translated into modern languages. Joke goes something like this. A dog walked into a tavern and said, "I can't see a thing. I'll open this one." Dog walked into a bar, said, "I can't see a thing. I'll open this one." Now, if you're a little confused by the meaning of that joke, you are not alone, right? Lots of us have been trying to solve its meaning and determine exactly what it's supposed to be about. The problem is, of course, that we do not understand the language, the culture, or the roots all that well because they are all Sumerian, and therefore the joke itself is somewhat indecipherable. Some of the jokes I led with might have been a little confusing if you didn't understand music, if you didn't understand, the positive, negative nature of neutrons, something along those lines. But the Sumerian dog joke is a completely different level of miscomprehension. And if you think about all jokes, they're inherently tied to culture, to the societies, the languages, expectations that we all live with, the social codes of conduct that we hold to be true, that we abide by. And what some societies find very funny, others do not find funny whatsoever. If you've ever watched a Japanese commercial and not quite understood what the product was or what the punchline was, you understand completely what I'm talking about. But the Sumerian dog joke, again, it's kind of maddening, right? Because it's so hard to understand. A dog walks into a tavern. "I can't see a thing. I'll open one." Well, he'll open one what? Why is the dog walking into a tavern? Why can the dog not see? All these things are confusing. And if we think about it, the joke is probably based off of whatever Sumerians thought about dogs or taverns at the time. It was probably linked closely to some funny element of their culture. The words themselves could have been clever puns or double meanings in the original language, or symbolic for what we know. Maybe the dog is a drunkard. Maybe the word for blind is a double entendre. Maybe it's a dirty joke. Maybe it's incredibly sad and hard-hitting and a commentary on life. Or maybe it's a nonsense. Maybe it's "I am the walrus" or something like that. Or maybe Sumerians didn't really have the same cadence in their jokes and they didn't drop punchlines the same way that Western audiences expect them to. The truth of the matter is that we don't know. We don't know what it means because we aren't Sumerian and we were not there. Regardless of all this, the language of the joke is driving people absolutely mad because they absolutely want to. They don't want to, they need to understand what its meaning is because it hints at something out there that we kind of universally do understand, which is humor, which is laughter. This idea of bringing people together, right? The bar joke is something that we all understand. Dog jokes are something we all understand. There's something there. It's hinting at something beautiful and meaningful, and we just have to know what it is. It's maddening, right? And so you focus on the language and you fixate on it. Every human being on the planet understands the value of a good joke and what it's trying to do and what it tries to get at, right? I mean, everyone loves a good joke. And so it makes trying to decipher this particular collection of words so frustrating, so difficult, and so challenging. I bring all this up in what has been a very long introduction to the fact that this reminds me of the old Nagarjuna metaphor. Nagarjuna, of course, one of the seven masters, Pure Land masters. The old Nagarjuna metaphor of the finger and the moon. You've probably heard this before. It's incredibly famous, right? Especially in Zen doctrine, but in Jodo Shinshu we study it as well. Nagarjuna once stated in his two-truth doctrine that there's a difference between the teaching of Buddhism, right, and the meaning of what's actually being taught. What he explained was that it's important to understand that a teaching established in the Buddhist canon is not necessarily just like a rule for the rule's sake, but one which is designed by its very nature to help us understand a greater universal truth. And that's what it's for, more than anything. He said that an individual who wanted to show someone the moon, for example, need only take a finger and point to it, right? So that others might focus and see it. Pointing at the finger, seeing the moon over there, right? The problem was that when this happened, some people would inadvertently focus on the moon doing the pointing rather than whatever the finger was actually pointing at in the first place. So they're kind of fixating on the wrong thing. It's like being unable to disseminate the forest from the trees, I guess, to use a metaphor upon another metaphor. This is in many ways in reference to our understanding of enlightenment, right? In the tradition of many other forms of Buddhism, there's this belief that through specific forms of practice and study, whether it's through austerity or meditative practice, single-mindedness, or saying the Nembutsu over and over and over again, one can become an enlightened being. But Nagarjuna would, of course, argue that focusing solely on those actual practices is to focus on the finger and not the moon. In this case, the moon would be what enlightenment is, which is the perfect understanding of interconnectedness of all beings, the recognition that like everything influences everything else, the perfect form of a perfect form of compassion for all sentient life, trying to be mindful of every living thing and care for them. And of course, the appreciation of the central truth that life is suffering, our suffering comes from our attachment, and that everything changes and nothing lasts forever. In temple, people often do the same thing, right? They get hung up on the very specific details about how to practice Buddhism. They always ask, what is an appropriate period of time to meditate? Which foot should I step forward with first when I'm approaching the altar? Or, which hand do I use to drop a pinch of incense into the incense burner? Is it okay to eat meat? Is it okay to get angry? All these sorts of things. Is it appropriate to read the sutras in English? I mean, there are answers to some of these questions that are specific and based off of the custom and the expectation and the culture. But I find a lot of this is sort of focusing on the wrong thing. I think that the easiest way for me to think about this is that the truth of the matter, at the end of the day, you're doing it right. I think the Buddha would say that you are doing it right. The Buddha, as we know, is an all-compassionate being, and really, in simply saying the Buddha's name, Namo Amida Butsu, putting our hands together, and trying our best every single day to understand ourselves, to understand one another, I think that that's doing it right. And maybe that requires more study, more reading for some people. Perhaps it means memorization of the sutras for others. Maybe it means just doing a single act of kindness a day, and even if you might forget about mindfully doing it all the time, coming back and trying your best the next time. But the truth of the matter is, because of the Buddha's compassion, the vow that all sentient beings who utter the name of the Buddha will reach enlightenment, whatever practice fits you is perfect for you. In the eyes of the Buddha, you're perfect. You're doing it right. And so to worry so much about how many times you say the Nembutsu, or how long you meditate, or the times when you do get angry, as opposed to just saying the Buddha's name with an open mind and heart and doing your best, is to focus on the finger, not the moon. Just as focusing on the language of the Sumerian dog joke is to miss the central idea that as maddening as the language and nuance might be, the most important thing is coming together with others, understanding one another, connecting with other people, and recognizing that all of our actions impact one another on a fundamental level. And also that dogs were incredibly popular back then as they are today. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap up with one more joke. Okay, I got one more joke for you, and then we'll close with Gasho. Okay? All right, ready? Here it goes. So a horse walks into a bar, and the horse orders a drink. The bartender looks at the horse, and he says, "Can you think of one good reason why I shouldn't throw you out of here?" The horse looks at him, and he's startled. And the horse says, "I can't think of anything," and then disappears. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. I probably should have explained this joke a little bit first. It comes from this idea of Descartes, right? Descartes was the famous philosopher, and he once said the famous phrase, "I think, therefore I am." I should have said that first. But you know, you're never supposed to put Descartes before the horse. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namandaps, Namandaps, Namandaps.